Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another great episode of Hometown Conversations with Sharon and Jenny. I'm Sharon St. Clair with Howard Hanna Real Estate, and we have...
I'm Jen DeLucia, the host of Spill With Me, Jenny D.
And we are so happy today to have a special guest. His name is Brett Woodburn. And he is a very well-known and prominent real estate attorney in the state of Pennsylvania and a title expert. Brett he's been practicing law for over 25 years. He's also served for approximately 17, as the associate counsel for the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And he serves as counsel to a multitude of associations throughout the state. Brett is frequently asked to come in as a title expert, and he's here to talk to us today about title insurance, wire fraud, and some things that you as a consumer and homeowner would want to know. Brett, welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Good to see you. Jen, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Well, let's get started, Brett, because he is a wealth of information. Brett, what is title insurance? And is this something that buyers should be aware of?
So title insurance, there's a lot of conversation about it, depending on who you're talking to in the industry. Some people say it's a waste of money, it's a junk fee. Actually what it is, it's probably one of the most important types of insurance that a homeowner can acquire. It's the only insurance that looks back in time and protects you from things that happened before. And people think about, well, how can that protect you? Why should I need it? Like any other insurance, right? You don't need it until you do need it. And what happens is, if you've got, back in the chain of title, if you've got some fraud, if you've got a missing owner, if you've got liens on the property, mortgages that maybe have not been satisfied, what can ultimately happen is that person can come back and say, this is my property, not yours. And if you don't have the title insurance, under a worst case scenario, you can lose your property with no compensation. How often does that happen? Only about 6% of the time in the industry, which doesn't sound like a lot unless you're in that 6% bracket.
Wow, I know. I'm learning so much. I mean, this is something that I didn't even think about.
Yeah, most don't. Most buyers don't think about it. Again, it's not talked about. Talking about title insurance, it's not a sexy topic. It's not an interesting topic. But when you think about the fact that when someone's buying a home, that is the number one path for individuals to build generational wealth. And you've got so many people that are stepping into what's going to be the most financially and oftentimes most emotionally significant acquisition of their lives. Next to children and spouses, the number one emotional tie to a person. And when people are buying and selling residential real estate, you don't think about it, but you're buying your future memories, your dreams, right? And you're the seller, you're selling the memories that are on that. And how do you protect that? And nobody's thinking about it because we're wrapped up in the excitement of buying the home. Right. And it's not what you want to think about. And when people buy homes, they're stretching financially. And so if we can cut corners, this is where we want to cut corners. It's not, because the consequences of title failure can be catastrophic and significant.
Well, so that brings me to, is title insurance expensive, and is it worth the cost?
I guess, I'll give you the traditional lawyer's answer because I am a lawyer, and that it depends. Is it expensive? It depends. Title insurance is regulated in Pennsylvania, so you can find out ahead of time. You can contact the title agency, the closing company that's going to do that. How do we do that? Talking to your real estate agent, they'll put you in touch with some people that they trust to do that. And you can get the estimate. You can go online and pull up a title insurance calculator and see, get an idea of what it's worth. Based on the value of the premium. So the upside of title insurance, unlike other insurance policies, it's a one-time premium payment. So you pay at the time you buy the policy. You don't pay for renewal fees.
Okay.
So on a dollar for dollar basis, I think it's relatively modest. There's two types of policies. There's a lender's policy and an owner's policy. When you get a mortgage, the bank is going to require you to get title insurance for the purchase price. You can get an owner's policy. When we think about it, who does the lender's policy cover? It covers the lender. It doesn't provide you, the homeowner, with any coverage. You can get an owner's policy, and without getting hyper technical, you pay the difference. So if I have a $200,000 property house that I'm buying, and the loan policy is going to cost me, say, $1,700, the owner's policy might be only another $100, but that's giving me all of the protection that's in the lender's policy plus the owner's policy. So that differential between what you pay for the lenders and the owners is usually very small, and in some instances I've seen where it's been as low as $20.
Really?
And yet you have people that don't want to get the policy because they don't understand the protection that it provides to them, even at $20. And to me, that doesn't make sense not to get it.
Right. Is that for a year? 20, like?
That's for as long as you own the property.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
the only time that you would ever want to increase title insurance, and people don't think about this, but if you did major renovation, you buy your home, you buy it for $250,000, you live in it for 20 years, you put on some additions, you're refinancing. Now the value comes in at $600,000. Well, your title insurance is for $200,000. So if I have a claim now that's a $400,000 claim, I'm covered for two, and now if I want to keep my house, I've got to come up with another $200,000.
Okay.
So that's the time when it might make sense to look at buying a little bit more. The other side of that is I've lived in the house for 20 years. Title insurance is backwards looking. I know what's going on in the house. If there would have been a claim, it would have come up by now. And there's some validity to that. But it's always worth, as the owner, it's always worth knowing what your options are so you can make an informed decision.
Right.
So, Brett, do buyers or sellers have any say or control over who issues title insurance?
In Pennsylvania, in a residential transaction, the buyer picks. The buyer gets to choose who their title company is going to be. And in practical terms, it's usually strongly influenced by the realtor involved in the transaction. Often the buyer's agent is they've worked with the title company for many, many years. They've got a comfort level. And sometimes there's a financial and ownership interest. That is not something that I would look at as a negative necessarily. The fact that somebody is referring you to a business that they're involved with, that may lend some additional comfort to that because they're invested in the outcome and in the success. But there are times in transactions out there when a seller wants to control where the title is going. And I would tell you to think about what the motivation behind that is. It might be you've got a complicated issue and the seller, when they bought the property, they're familiar with it, they're trying to make the transaction run more smoothly. That's worth considering. On the other hand, you may have a seller that has some problems in the background and they want to work with their own title company to minimize their exposure to a problem. And so I would tell you, just think about it and talk to your real estate agent. It's never a bad idea to get a real estate attorney involved in the transaction because it is a big deal. And if you have questions, the realtor is going to be able to answer probably 85–90% of your questions. If you want to have somebody or in a question like that, talk to an attorney or talk to a title agent that can give you just an objective idea on what the pros and cons are.
Yes. Okay, so what should buyers and sellers know about fraud, cyber crimes, and any risks to the money that being exchanged as part of the buying and selling homes?
Fraud, cybercrime, wire fraud is a huge multi-billion, I think it's approaching $1 trillion industry right now. And
That's massive.
I know, I'm like, what?
It's
Wow.
insane. And it's some very simple steps a consumer can take to protect themselves. And the majority of the time, the weakness when a fraud occurs, it's at the human level because we put protocols in place to minimize that. The number one thing that you want to know as a consumer, whether it's a buyer or a seller, because we have wires that go in and out depending on the side of the transaction, both transactions, before you send a wire, pick up the phone and call. So every title company that you're working with in a real estate transaction will have instructions that say we don't change our wire instructions, and yet someone will get an email that says, hey, we had an emergency, we've changed our wire instructions, and they don't pick up the phone and call. And we always tell our clients, call. They don't. They'll go to the bank and they make the mistake of thinking, well, I've gone to the bank, I've given the instructions, the bank will protect me. They don't.
Right.
The bank doesn't pick up the phone and call. The bank is relying on you. It's your money. Pick up the phone and call. Wire transfers can be safe if you take the simple steps. Remember, with I'd rather write a check, or I'd rather get a bank check. Bank checks can be done fraudulently as well. That's why the title industry went to wire transfers, because the check kiting and check fraud became very popular. Now it's shifted over to wire fraud, and people are starting to move back to checks. Well, those fraudulent schemes still exist, so you just have to be diligent. It just takes a few moments. If I'm sending you 100, 200, 300, $1 million in a wire, I mean, what happens if you never get that money back and it never goes to, and it doesn't go where it's supposed to go? And all you had to do to protect yourself was pick up the phone and make a call. And it's oftentimes that simple. You're working with an agent, you're working with a title person, you've got a phone number that you've communicated with them, you've used to communicate with them. Use that number. Use Google to find a good phone number. Don't ever call the number. If someone sends you an email or text message saying, hey, we've changed instructions, here's the number, don't call that number, because that's the fraudster's number. You're going to call them and verify their instructions with the fraudster. And is it a lot? It takes 3 minutes, to make that call and read the instructions. And people always think about it, and then unfortunately, it's your fault, your fault, your fault, your fault. Mm-hmm. And you feel very empathetic because someone has just lost their life savings. And you're thinking, my God, all it would have been if they'd have picked up the phone and called me, we could have avoided this.
And they look so real, right? Like, you'll get an email and you're thinking, oh, okay, this is, this looks legit. They look legit.
They do. If you get an email and you take your mouse and you hover over the email address, you can have a better idea whether it's a legitimate or an illegitimate email address. It's a very simple thing to do. As AI is getting more and more sophisticated, these emails are getting more and more sophisticated. The calls, you're not running into overseas accents because they're now using the deepfake, you're using the AI technology to sound like the person right down the street. So it is getting more and more sophisticated. But for all of that, if we just slow down and take a breath, and if we don't know what to do, ask. You're working with a realtor for a reason. You're working with a title agent for a reason. What do I need to do? Is this safe? What steps do I need to take? You ask the questions and you follow the protocols, and you have protected yourself from fraud. That doesn't mean you can't be a victim of theft. People can hack in, they can hack the bank accounts. I mean, we hear about that all the time. But this is the things that you as the buyer and seller can do in a transaction where you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's a very little thing. It's a very simple thing to take that step, and people just are in a hurry.
Right.
And they just don't want to make the call.
Yes.
Wow.
I agree. I know. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So, Brett, before I ask you the next question, if somebody goes to their bank and they say, can you help me to wire money? Is it the responsibility of the bank, or is it the responsibility of the person to make those calls?
From the banking perspective, it's the consumer's responsibility.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of faith that we put in the financial institution that's holding our money. We want them to be looking out for us.
Yes.
Some banks, some banking individuals that you have a long-standing relationship with might do that for you.
Okay.
But what I've heard too many times within the industry is, the bank says, did you verify the instructions? And the consumer says, yes. And the consumer is, here they are, they emailed me this document. I verified it because it came from the person I've been emailing back and forth with. And they accept it and they move forward. And you've got a window of maybe 2 to 3 hours if you discover the fraud, where maybe you can get it all back. The more time that passes, the less likely you are to get the money back. The common way that the fraudsters are dealing with this now, and a lot of times what they're doing is they're getting somebody relatively local who's vulnerable and wants to make money without thinking about whether I should or I shouldn't. They're sort of a mule where the money is immediately going into their account, so it's a customer with the same bank. and that hits the wire hits their account, and there's an instruction that when the wire hits, as soon as it's processed and cleared within a few moments or a few minutes, whatever the case may be, then it's immediately sent to another bank,
Right.
usually somewhere else in the United States in a distant area, and then that third wire hits it overseas. And once it's overseas, it's gone. Now, there are companies out there. One of the things I would suggest as a consumer, when you're working with a realtor or title company, ask them what their protocols are for reducing risk. What are you doing to protect my information, my materials? Certified, it's a unpaid commercial. Certified is a company that works in the real estate and the title space, and they verify wiring instructions. And it's a modest fee, $7 to $12, for a transaction, and they will verify the wiring instructions for you. Then, when I rely on that, if they were fraudulent, well, certified is now backing and protecting the consumer. So it's a level of insurance, another level of protection for you to do, and it's becoming. I'm not quite sure I'm ready to say it's an industry norm yet, but it's becoming much more common. And there are other companies that do that. I know Certified because I work with them. There are other companies that provide similar services. I'm not as familiar with their names, but it's really the question for the title company. What are you doing to protect me? What are you doing to protect my money? What services do you offer? Take advantage of them.
Right.
Push the risk onto somebody else whose job it is to protect your money.
So is that something that the title company initiates and says to the consumer, we're just going to build this into the fee? Or is that something that the consumer has to specifically ask for?
Good question.
It's a good question. The way I handle it with my title company, the way I teach it when I teach title agents, is it's part of the service that we offer. We're asking. Now, we're passing the cost through. So it's a choice. It's $7 fee. This is what we're offering. Do you want to take advantage of it? Yes or no? Get into a little bit more detail. And then the consumer makes that decision. When they're saying no, most of the time they're being influenced by a third party, whether it's their agent or real estate agent or Uncle Harry who knows more than they do. And so they're passing on that $7 protection. But then my policies, my procedures are then, you got to jump through some extra hoops for me. And I'm going to make a phone call to you. Did you get the instructions? Do you understand? Or my staff will make the call. And I'm going to bother you to make you answer the questions, because now you're not willing to protect yourself. That means I've got to go through extra steps to protect you and me. Your money, but also me, because if you don't follow the protocols, you're going to blame me. And I've offered you all the protections. You're not willing to take them.
Right.
So I need to make sure that I'm pushing them onto you, and I'm also protecting myself to do what I can, because I don't want your money to be stolen. That's a horrible conversation to have with somebody. When someone says, we didn't receive your wire, what do you mean? I sent it 3 days ago. And now you've got that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. I know what happened, and now I've got to break it to this person that where'd you send the wire? And usually the minute someone tells me, if it's a bank, that's the first thing you know, because it's not my bank. Or if it is, they're real sophisticated, then they emulate that. So the title company should be proactive with it, should be giving the consumer the option to take the service or not take the service. I mean, it's everybody's right to choose to be protected.
Right.
The wisdom says, from my perspective, that $7 or $12 fee, or whatever the fee is I'm saying 7 or 12 because that's what I'm familiar with. There are other programs out there that may be a little bit more, a little bit less. For that small dollar investment to protect your 6-figure life savings. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? And anybody I've spoken with said, man, if I'd have known, or if I'd had that opportunity to do it again, hindsight is 20/20.
So true.
That is a great takeaway, Brett, because, there was a situation one time, and I'll never forget, I was sitting there and I got a call from my client's lawyer who was out of state and said, Sharon, we didn't receive funds. Mm-hmm. And I said, excuse me. And I aged 10 years in 10 seconds.
Yep.
Right.
And, what happened was the title company, it did not go, my first thought was, did it go to the wrong account?
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately called title and said, they haven't gotten funds. What's going on? And it was resolved And, you know, the title company, who shall remain nameless, with an attorney, again, nameless, said, oh, we didn't send that out for a couple days. So my client and their counsel was not happy about that, and it was taken care of. But when you get a phone call like that, there's no, you know, and so, you know, I always counsel clients, you know, we take and I just love the fact that we can get this insurance, but you have to take, you know, you should take a lot of very proactive steps to make sure that, you know, all of these communications are very tight, and all of the follow-up that goes along with that.
It doesn't matter how good your team is working with you. No one is ever going to protect you as well as you'll protect yourself.
Right.
Right.
And you've got to take some responsibility. I mean, I think, you know, it's my job as the professional to guide you and to minimize your risk. But I think, you know, for us to be successful, you've got to take the onus as well on yourself. And so I'm going to take a couple extra steps to make sure that this is done correctly, because you're buying a house that you are in love with, and you want to make, you've got all these dreams, and the last thing you want to do is start your ownership, or what you thought was going to be your ownership period, with a nightmare of all of a sudden I can't buy the house because my money's gone. And that's just, and then made worse if you've already sold your house, and now you have no money and nowhere to live.
Oh gosh.
And that, sadly, that does happen.
How long has this been going on, like the fraud, would you say?
The wire fraud has really become popular probably over about, I'm going to say, the last 7 to 10 years. Prior to that, it just wasn't, we didn't have the levels of sophistication and fraudulent wire instructions looked fraudulent. I mean, they were about as easy to spot as the email from the Nigerian prince, right? We're all familiar with that.
Right.
You know, it's the same type of thing. And if you just looked at the wire instructions, you could see, you know, the whiteout that someone changed it, and it was glaring. As people become more proficient with your software programs, your you know, the different things that you can alter, change words on it, the fonts are now more realistic, or more in tune with what you're looking at. It's just gotten better. They've just gotten better at it, and they're very, very sophisticated. It is a growing concern. The numbers keep going up, and insurance on the title side, as a business owner, the costs for the insurance are becoming more and more unwieldy, and the levels of coverage are getting smaller. So cost is going up, coverage is going down, because the losses are so
They can be
insane.
staggering.
They really are, and the number of companies that will insure wire transactions is diminishing again because of the losses.
That makes sense. So, Brett, title theft, is that a thing?
Yes, someone can steal your house without moving it. It really is what happens, and this is one of the benefits. Title insurance is one of the benefits as a buyer,
Right.
to protect you. And so what happens with title theft? Someone goes to, and they target vacant homes, or, you know, in the lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, if you have absentee landlords, and maybe a tenant in the house, and they'll go to the courthouse, they'll research it, they'll pull the deed, and they will get somebody to fraudulently sell the property to you. They will make a deed from the fraudster, the quote-unquote owner, to you, their partner, with a notary in the middle who's doing the fraudulent notary transaction.
Wow.
Now we're recording it, and then I'm going to wait 6 months to a year, and now I'm going to sell the property. I'm going to sell, Jen, I just stolen your property, you don't know it. You're on vacation, you know, you're out overseas
Make
for
me
a couple,
cry.
yeah. And I sell it, and you come back and you find someone else is living in your house.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't even imagine that.
So as the buyer, the title insurance will help ferret that out. It can't always catch it, but again, if you've got the right coverage, at least you are protected.
Okay.
Right, because you've got that on there. There are, as a property owner, there are the different services out there. LifeLock is one. There's a number of those others that'll watch your credit. You can add property addresses on there, and they can let you know if there are transactions happening with your property. People will take out home equity lines of credit on your property in your name, and
So that would be something like if you have a credit monitoring service, you want to make sure that you also add in anything related to the house and title. So if someone does try to fraud you,
Why my
defraud
house?
you, no, not your house,
Putting
Jenny,
it on me.
and they try to take out a home equity loan, that you would be notified, so that you could basically go back to that entity.
there are some other companies that are starting to offer that particular type of service as well. I'm not familiar with any of the names because they are relatively new to the real estate space, and that's not my area. I don't typically get involved in that early front. I know that the National Association of Realtors, the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors, may have some information about some of these different services, because those vendors go to the state and national associations to get their information out there. What I could, I would tell you, contact, if you're a homeowner now and you want to, how do I do this? Contact a realtor in the area that you might know and see if they may not know the answer off the top of their head, but they may be able to make some calls and do some digging.
Great.
I've learned so much. I'm like writing everything down. I'm like, oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For
Thank
being
you.
here today and for informing us and our viewers today, because this is something that I had no idea about.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very
And I
much.
appreciate you, Sharon, because you know a lot about it, like about real estate. So, I mean, having you here too, I'm just like, I've got like the professionals.
But whether you're buying or selling, these are just good things for people to know to protect themselves in today's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Thank
awareness,
you.
not fear.
It's awareness,
Yes.
not fear. I
Yes.
like that. That's
Educate, empower.
Yes.
Yes.
We got the professional here, Brett Burnwood. I am so
Or
excited.
Woodburn.
Woodburn. What'd I say?
Burnwood. Right. Call me Charcoal. I'm good at that. Yeah,
I see it the wrong way. I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
Woodburn, we so appreciate your time today on Hometown Conversations with Sharon St. Clair and Jen DeLucia. I just am so excited that we have someone like you that's on to really inform us and awareness.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Brett.
much.
Have a great day.
Bye.